Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things Maker and Embedded and Lovely. And we are back from Embedded World and almost recovered. Once again, this is the second show in a row I'm doing with a slightly scratchy throat, but I don't think it's going to have too much of a problem. It's also a kind of exciting show because yes, we're going to talk about various things we saw at Embedded World. We're not going to repeat a lot of the content though. If you'd like to see the actual content from Embedded World, you can find that on our YouTube channel, also on the Electromaker blog. I don't want to fill an entire show with videos you may have already seen. However, we'll be discussing 3 or 4 things that I thought were awesome, including a look at the Portenta C33 a week after release, because as you may have seen from the video I made, I was a bit flustered, didn't know much about it, and of course the fantastic new BeaglePlay, along with things from Nordic and Silicon Labs and Red Pitaya at Embedded World. However, we'll also be talking about the new SeeedStudio Xiao board that has just been released, the ESP32S3 edition, the upcoming Sense edition, and the LCD screen that, as far as I can tell, works with pretty much every SeeedStudio Xiao board, making them way more interesting even than they already were. So, with all that to get through, let's get on with the show. We are going to start the show by talking about the Embedded World conference that we were at last week. Now, some of you may have already seen all of the content that we put out from that, but I do understand there are some of you that probably only wants to watch the longer content videos. And don't worry, I'm not going to repeat that exact video content, although I am going to talk about a few of the projects that I saw now that I've had a week to kind of digest them. But I would like to point out our blog, which is just electromaker.io/blog, has over a page, I think, of content which is all filmed at Embedded World. Every single one of these articles has an interview in it describing what's going on and links out to all of the things that they talked about. But we're going to start this week by talking about the BeaglePlay. The BeaglePlay is a new Linux-based single-board computer, and I find it really quite exciting. And it is one of 2 new boards from BeagleBoard. I got to sit down with Jason Cridner, who is one of the founders of BeagleBoard at Embedded World, and he was lovely and really nice with his time. Found us a nice, quieter place to sit and talk about all this kind of stuff. It was fantastic. And we talked about the BeaglePlay, which is the board you can see down on the table just here. I'll see if I can find a close-up of it. And also the Beagle Connect Freedom. So if I make this big, maybe we'll get a better view of what's going on. So the background here is a connection of microbus click boards, and microbus is just one of the many form factors for shields you can attach to boards. Microbus is Microelectronica's version of Adafruit's Stemma or Stemma QT, or Sparkfun's Quick or Arduino-based shields. It is a form factor that is designed to get the most out of the smallest amount of pins, and it does bring a little bit more to the table than things like Stemma. There's nothing wrong with Stemma QT and Quick. You can get a huge amount of stuff up and running really quick, but that's 2 wires plus power, I believe. This is SPI and I2C and various different forms of input and output, and anyone can create one of these boards. Microbus has licensed it so that anyone that makes a Microbus form factor compatible board can get it verified and even use, I believe, the Click name for it. But don't quote me on that, not a legal person type. Now, underneath it is what we're really talking about here. This one is the BeaglePlay, and it is a Linux-based SBC with a brand new Texas Instrument chip in it. And from what I understand from Jason, both talking in this interview and off, the introduction of this cheaper chip that can run Linux the way that it does is the crux of this. And the board itself, in fact, if I make this bigger just one more time, just before we lose it, we'll look at an image of it in a moment. As you see, it's slightly larger than Raspberry Pi form factor, but it has a full-size HDMI output, which is something I'm very glad to see. It has the microbus slot, as I mentioned, for connecting stuff. It does also have a quick connector, which will work with Stemma QT, and a Grove connector as well for working with SeeedStudio things too. Other things include side connectors for displays and cameras, and a real-time clock. You can see where you can put the battery in just there. And yes, so the other thing that's interesting here is the aerial that's coming off the end of it here. This is a sub-gigahertz networking device that I do not even begin to understand, but it works with the Beagle Connect Freedom, which is another dev board they have over here, the one with the big aerial, which has 2 microbus slots on as well. So you're beginning to maybe see how this could work. This has a battery inside it and a little development board. You can put on some sensors onto this thing and sit it somewhere and talk up to a kilometer away on a completely sub-gigahertz separate network to the the BeaglePlay board. Sorry, lots of new things to learn and new names to learn. I'll leave it at that for now. I want you to go and watch the interview with Jason. If you'd like to know more about it, they are both linked already on the BeagleBoard website. I can't remember how much this is. It's close to 100 euros, I think. I would argue that the amount of stuff that they've added into it makes it worth it. Okay, I'm seeing 96 euros and 54 cents here for the BeaglePlay, which is available already from Mauser. There's a link to that just from here. And if I remember correctly, okay, I think the last time I looked, the BeagleConnect Freedom was not actually available, but it looks like it might be now. It appears that it is available, and for just for just 27 euros and 86 cents, and however much that is in dollars. So I will leave it there for now. I will leave a link to this interview with Jason and the blog post in the description of the video. Very exciting to see a new BeagleBoard come out in general, because I've loved BeagleBoard since the very early days. Back in those early days when I was first starting out with this kind of stuff, I had an Arduino Uno, I had a Raspberry Pi first edition, I think, and I had a BeagleBoard. I think it was the BeagleBoard Black. They were the three things that really started the thing that got me to do this today. So it was very nice to speak to Jason and very nice to hear about the new board. If you'd like to know more information, there's a link in the description. Now, we also stopped by the Nordic semiconductor stand, and last time we spoke to them, it was quite exciting because they just released the NRF7002 Wi-Fi 6 IC, and they'd also released, and they had like a development board there, but it wasn't ready for release yet, and now something new has appeared. Quick benefits of Wi-Fi 6, it uses a lot less power, it's very good for things like Wi-Fi positioning, something I didn't really understand until I spoke to Robin about it. Now, if I pause this video just here, this is an NRF 9160 development kit. We've talked about them before. The 9160 system in package is the same system in package that is inside the Thingy 91, a cellular IoT package that allows you to speak to the cloud, without having to be connected to the internet or anything. And it also allows things like GPS connectivity and GNSS and locationing that way. On the side here, what you're seeing is the NRF7002 EK, which is a completely new thing that has not been released yet, or even announced as far as I know. They just happen to have one there, and they said it's coming later this year. We can't really tell you anything more than that. Which is the 7002 Wi-Fi 6 IC in a Wi-Fi compatible, not Wi-Fi, in an Arduino compatible shield. So, of course, that means it fits on all of the Nordic development boards that are already out there, because they all have Wi-Fi Arduino Shield compatible pins, but presumably that means it'll also work with other things like Arduinos, for example, although you've got to always keep your eye out because Arduino Uno 5 volt tolerant, this is going to be 3.3 volt tolerant. Yeah, keep your eyes out. Now, the demo was super interesting because it's showing how the same kind of locationing that is used outside is now possible to do inside using Wi-Fi 6. Now, there's elements of this I do not understand yet and will get wrong. It was explained to me in the moment and it's made lots of sense. And then 5 minutes later, me not being an engineer, the concepts had escaped me somewhat. But from what I understand, it takes a reading from every Wi-Fi box it can find without actually connecting to it. It just measures the decibels and measures the unique SSID or the unique MAC address or something of those boxes. And then it can send all of that stuff up using its cellular IoT chip to the cloud. And so for as long as you have a mobile phone reception, it's going to be able to send that data to the Nordic cloud. And that is where they have a massive collection of these just IDs of routers. No more information. It can't see anything that's passing through the routers. But based on those ideas, it can give a much better idea of where something is, even if it is indoors in situations where you wouldn't usually get GPS reception. I hope I explained that well. I suggest heading to this blog post, which has the interview with Robin in it. And while we're talking about that, sorry, not Robin. Robin was the one that showed us the ML model. This was Finn, I believe, was his name. We'll come back to him in just a moment because he's also the one that talked us through the Matter and Threads demo they had there. Now, if you would like to find out more about this, there are links to the NRF 9160DK and the Thingy 91 here, and of course the Wi-Fi IC itself. There is also a development kit for that, which is around this EK that I showed you. However, there is no information on it as yet. This is sort of a very sneak peek kind of thing. Later this year is when it's supposed to be coming out. Now, the demo on the Thingy 53 stand was very familiar to me because it is very similar to the firmware that shipped on the Thingy 53 that I had for a while ago and gave away as a prize. This thing works natively with Edge Impulse, and the firmware that was on it was interesting because I followed the instructions, I went to Edge Impulse, and there was already a model of training data that they had, so to save time, I used that training data. It wasn't until I watched this video and Robin showed me in almost real time, there was someone who came and stood in front of the camera in the middle of the video, and there was also just so much interference on the floor that they had to reset and reconnect the Bluetooth to the board. So there was a couple of hiccups, but even so, in almost real time, seeing him take the thingy and then use the onboard MEMS microphone to record his voice. And he said, obviously, you would record this over and over and over again, but you can do it all in one go. Press the button, record, 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 record. It sends it to the phone via Bluetooth Low Energy. The phone sends it to the cloud, and then you can work on it on your phone in the cloud, or just to make it easier, he did it with the mouse and keyboard, I believe, or with the touch screen. And you can split that in the cloud, train the model in the cloud using Edge Impulse, send it back to the phone, send it onto the Thingy 53 via the phone, Bluetooth Low Energy, and then you have a trained model on the phone that you just did with no code and nothing. It's wild. I was aware that it wasn't particularly hard to do, but I skipped a few steps when I did it myself, and seeing it happen, in real time was insane when you think about how hard it was to do any kind of machine learning on even larger devices not that long ago. Out of the... and there was one other demo, and of course, how could I forget this? Because this is talking about the thing of the moment, which is Matter over Thread, because it has arrived. Now, there were a lot of Matter demos here at Embedded World. This one was particularly impressive because they covered all the bases, really. The idea here being that they had various different devices that all connected in different ways. In fact, there was a diagram of it in the background just here, which maybe we have a close-up of. We had an Apple iPhone and an Android phone connected to a Wi-Fi access point. They have a light switch, which is connected via their new Wi-Fi IC, the 7002. And then there was a HomePod Mini attached to an Eve Energy plug, something I've seen before, and a Thingy 53 acting as a weather station. So it's just sending data back from its temperature and humidity sensor, along with a couple of other things. The Google Nest Hub down here was connected just to, I believe, a set of blinds off on the side. And in this video later on, you will see me you'll see me actually do this demo. I will speak to the Apple HomeKit here and say, Siri, can you open the blinds, please? And then the blinds start to open. And the bit where it gets really interesting is I then said, okay, Google, close my blinds, please. And it closed them. And these things are only connected with each other via Thread. For me, as someone who used to write smart home news and talked about Matter and Thread as it kind of started to appear, it was wild to see something like this just work in the wild, as it were. Smart home setup is about to get a lot easier. What you actually buy in terms of hardware is going to get a lot less important, and this demo was really interesting. You can find all three of these demos and interviews on the blog post that will be linked in the description of the video, along with links to everything that was talked about here. And it's always impressive to see what Nordic bring to conferences, and this time round, despite the fact that they had a massive transport issue and had, I think 40 members of their team stuck at different airports through no fault of their own, they still put on a fantastic demo, and it was fantastic to see. So this is me talking with Daniel Cooley, the Chief Technical Officer of Silicon Labs, about the new XG27. It's a chip that they've just put out, and it's designed for Matter and connectivity. It's a short interview. It's definitely worth going and watching. I do press him for new information about what things that might be coming out, and of course he has to say, we can't really tell you anything, but there's going to be cool stuff to do with connectivity and Matter and Thread. Which kind of fits well because Matter and Thread is something that was big at Embedded World. And in fact, Silicon Labs had a Matter and Thread demo. This one was similar but different to the one at the Nordic stand. In that the idea here is that, these things could connect to as it says here, a Google Home or whatever. But this is a Wi-Fi chip and a Thread board all working on the same network. The idea being that it doesn't matter to the end user what runs on Thread, what runs on Wi-Fi. It all works with one specific software SDK and a bunch of hardware. There's various different boards from Silicon Labs you can get, dev boards which are available now if you're interested in getting started with it. There's links to all of those things out here. It was a fascinating second demo of the same thing, because when I was getting into the idea of how Matter might work, there was no physical demos. There was a few kind of software examples of what might work in the future, and of course Thread, OpenThread, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't really hadn't really taken off yet, and now it's here. And there was a huge amount of, every single stand that had connectivity devices had a Matter and Matter over Thread or Matter over Wi-Fi or mixing these things together demo. It's obviously a big deal. If you are interested in finding out more, you can head to the blog, the description in the blog post. Nope, the blog post will be in the description of this video, as will the links to the other two, the Silicon Labs interview. And finally, what was the other one? Oh yes, how could I forget this? This is one of the coolest things I saw all conference. This was a demo of Amazon Sidewalk, but being used from a developer's point of view. Now, very quickly, if you don't like Amazon Sidewalk, I don't blame you. And if you don't know what it is, it's Amazon's proprietary network running at about 900 gigahertz, I don't know, which uses a small amount of your internet bandwidth to create a subnetwork of devices, and that goes from your house out to other houses. If you have a Ring doorbell, it can connect to the Ring doorbell of your neighbor. People, for obvious reasons, have big security concerns about this. Amazon say it is secure. Make of that what you will. However, Amazon and pretty much everyone, you always expect these systems to be completely closed and things that you can't really work with. Silicon Labs now have put out a Pro Kit, which is a device, a development kit that allows you to create your own Amazon Sidewalk connected devices. Now, I'm not going to try and explain any further than that because it's beyond my knowledge. However, Andreas gave a fantastic explanation in the interview in this video here. And if you'd like to know more about the Pro Kit, there is a link to it at the bottom of the page here as well, which talks about the silicon that is being used. In this case, the BG21, the BG24, which are part of the EFR32 range of microcontrollers, which are Silicon Labs, Bluetooth Low Energy system on chips, and various different forms of connectivity too. However, as I mentioned, this is Amazon Sidewalk, not Bluetooth Low Energy, and if you would like to know more, head to the link in the description and watch Andreas' description of it. The idea that you can make your own Amazon Sidewalk devices, though, is kind of interesting because, again, we talked about Matter and Thread already. We're about to talk about it we've already talked about Matter and Thread twice in this show. And this is just another way that you're going to be able to make your own devices that work with what should be proprietary and closed networks. Make of that what you will in terms of security. Now, last year at Embedded World, we met Red Pitaya, and I had talked about the Red Pitaya boards on the show before. They are these amazing kind of do-everything Swiss Army knife boards for engineers. In fact, that's their tagline, the Swiss Army knife board for engineers. This time around, they wanted to introduce a couple of new products. Now, if you're not familiar with Red Pitaya, you might be looking at this and thinking, this is quite a lot of money for a development board, but this is not a development board. I mean, you can use it as one for sure, but this is an FPA-driven, multi-purpose, multi-channel instrument for doing pretty much everything you would want to do in a lab. This version, which is $448, could quite happily, especially for a starting out engineer or someone who just wants to save the desk space who isn't working with especially high frequency stuff, they could use this for everything. So as I mentioned here, oscilloscope, signal generator, spectrum analyzer, Bode analyzer or Bode analyzer, depending on where you're from, logic analyzer, LCR meter, and vector network analyzer. And I think they list even more things on the site that I just didn't put into the copy because it would be too long otherwise. So I've been kind of into the idea of Red Pitaya boards for a long time. You can use this for all of those things, but they also have a Python API that makes it very easy to work with. You can also control it as you would other industrial devices, if I remember correctly. I know very little about that. Or you can just completely program your own firmware and hardware using FPGA programming tools, again, something I know almost nothing about, or a C and C++ SDK that they've created, both for just using the board normally or for reprogramming it to do your own thing with hardware. Now, with that primer as an introduction, this interview was one that I did with Niku. I think last year I spoke with Nina. Niku is the head product manager of this. And he was talking about the two new products they have, which is the X-Channel system and the STEMLab 12514 4-input. Now, this is a fantastic interview. He goes through everything in a surprisingly brief way. It just explains everything better than I could. So, yeah, there'll be a link to this in the description of the video. I highly suggest watching the interview with him. Niku's a very passionate and interesting dude. But the thing itself, there's two. The X-Channel system and the STEMLab 12514 4-input. So, just as a note, this is the STEMLab 12514, and it has 2 inputs and 2 outputs. 2 inputs that could be used for example, an oscilloscope, 2 outputs that could be used for example, function generation or, making waves. I seem to remember there was a project on the Electromaker site a while ago where they used the output from a Red Pitaya in order to create a tone that was then fired using light and picked up at the other end with a speaker attached to a solar panel. Wild project. They now have a version of the STEMLab 12514, which just has 4 inputs for specific use cases where you just want to have more inputs and you don't need the outputs. And so that is one of the things that they announced. The other one, which is super exciting, is the X-Channel system. Now, looking at it here is one decent way of looking at it, but I hope, there we go, yes, in this video I can show you a better example of it. So the X-channel system is a way of attaching red Pitayas together. These have been specifically designed to be daisy-chained, as it were, all via Ethernet, and it's all super high speed, allowing you to add, theoretically, as many inputs and outputs as you could possibly want, which is kind of wild. Yeah, it's sort of an amazing idea. Instead of saying, okay, you're going to buy one device that has a million inputs and outputs when your project scales and you might need to suddenly be monitoring a bunch of different things. No, you just get another board, attach it by BNC to the board before it, and then attach it as part of the daisy-chained network of things. One of the boards being a master and the rest of them passing all of that information onto them, so only one of them passes the information into your host computer. Now, if it sounds like some of that goes a little bit over my head, it does. I'm not an engineer, but I still find this an entirely compelling thing. If you would like to know more about Red Pitaya, head to the link in the description. It'll take you to this blog post, and from here you can head to their website and find out more. And of course, watch the interview with Niku. Now, one of the things you may have noticed last week when we were at Embedded World is that we happened to run across the Arduino Pro stand pretty much the moment they put out the new Portenta C33. It was a really odd moment. I was being demoed something with the Nicola Vision board, when the Stefan Implicito, who's the guy that you see me talking to in this interview here, there'll be a link to this in the bio, there'll be a link to this in the description of this video if you'd like to see him talking about it. It was a kind of interesting interview though, because the board had literally just been released. I'd seen no information on it. And I think Stefan wasn't entirely sure exactly how much stuff he could say. For example, I asked him about the price, and he said that he didn't know a price, but when I checked the website, there was a price that was on there. So I'm assuming that maybe it was a last-minute decision to actually release a price or something. I have no idea. The point is, in the time when I was talking about this at Embedded World, both on YouTube and doing social media stuff, I didn't know anything about it. And now that I've had a little bit of time to kind of digest the fact that this exists, I'm really excited about it. I think it might be the most approachable Arduino Pro board they've put out yet. And that's not just because it's cheaper. Although it absolutely is. I mean, at $62, I believe it's the lowest price board in the entire Pro line. Even the Arduino Nicola, I think, is more than that. I might have that incorrect. However, it's definitely cheaper than the Portenta H7. And at $62, I think it's also cheaper than the new Arduino Giga that they've just put out as well, which of course is a very different kind of board. But it really is starting to show how Arduino's Pro line and the main line are starting to kind of cross over. And that's not the only way that these two lines are crossing over, because the board itself is a little bit different. This blog post on the Arduino blog is a good example of what I'm talking about. So I'll be linking this in the description as well. The C33, the high performance, low price oxymoron. I'll try and keep this brief. So as well as the chip and the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth chip on board, you'll notice a main difference straight away is that you have the pinholes here. These pinholes are not only breadboard friendly, but they are compatible with the Arduino MKR line, the Maker line, which is at the top end of the normal Arduino line currently. And there's a bunch of different shields available for the Maker line, which will all be compatible with this. They're both 3.3 volt tolerant. And yeah, it says it is completely compatible with the Maker line. Also with all of the Nicola add-ons as well. I believe that's this connector here. The Nicola's the one I know the least about. And the controller is an ARM Cortex M33. I haven't done any real looking into how it stacks up against other things. But the other thing that I thought was really worth thinking about is the fact that they've made the second thing in its main tech specs that it covers MicroPython and other high-level programming languages. So this really is an Arduino Pro board that's being put out to be as accessible to everyone as possible. It's a really well thought out thing, in my opinion. I know other people always have big opinions about Arduino Pro lines when it comes out in terms of the price. But yeah, I'm really excited about this one. I'm looking forward to seeing how it works. Oh, did I also mention that it has a regular Portenta connector as well? So it's completely compatible with the Portenta line, the Maker line, and the Nicola line. I don't think there's any other Arduino board with that level of cross-compatibility straight out of the gate. I might be wrong about that. Now, if you'd like more information about this, I will leave a link to this blog post in the description. You can click through to the Portenta C33 hardware page, which tells you pretty much the same things again. It's still early days. There's a little more information here. You know, it goes into the tech specs and a few more of the things that you would expect from the industrial side of it, like secure ARM Secure Zone, I think it's called, and the over-the-air updates. And of course, I'll link to this as well, which is our interview with Stefan just after it was released and confusion reigned. But yes, the Arduino Portenta C33 is a really quite exciting board. I'm looking forward to holding one in my hands again, but actually being able to plug it into a computer and seeing how easy it is to get up and running. If you are enjoying the Electromaker Show, it would mean a lot if you could scroll down to under the video you are watching and click the subscribe button. It just means that our videos will show up in your subscriptions on the left here. That same menu becomes a drop-down, and if you click all here, it will give you notifications within YouTube whenever we put up videos. Now, normally this is just the Electromaker Show. As you'll see right now, we have a wealth of stuff from the embedded world floor. We don't usually put out this many videos in such short succession. It's just that when we go to conferences, it's quite a fun time, yeah, we record a lot of interviews with a lot of people, but yeah, this means that whenever that we do put up a new show or upload one of the product of the weeks, you'll get a ping in the top corner here. If you're someone like me and you're subscribed to hundreds if not thousands of channels, it's very useful to keep an eye on the ones that you like. Finally, while we're talking about liking, clicking the like button does have a measured effect on YouTube. The more people that like your videos, the more chance there is that YouTube will recommend those videos to the kind of people who watch maker content and things like Arduino and Raspberry Pi content, so it does make a marked difference to us. And of course, doing all three of these things is absolutely free. However, if you do prefer a slightly more monetary way of supporting us, there is a very simple way that you can do that. And that is by shopping at the Electromaker store. It's just electromaker.io/shop, and we stock things from, well, everyone you can see running across the top of the screen. Udo, Sparkfun, Adafruit, Arduino, BeagleBoard, DF Robot, MG Chemicals, Nordic Semiconductor, Parallax Inc., Pimoroni, Raspberry Pi, and many others. If you are thinking of starting a project for yourself, or buying a gift for someone else, or maybe getting stock in for your work, we can do multiple things in terms of prices and deliveries. Our Trustpilot score is really high. We can send to pretty much everywhere in the world without problems. So, yeah, if you are considering starting a new project, think of shopping at the Electromaker store, because we do not run any ads on our videos. We do not have any ads inside the videos. So this is pretty much the only way that we're going to be supporting our show, and it makes a massive difference every single time someone purchases something. All right, that has been the adverty part of the show for this week. Thank you for your patience. Let's get back to the fun stuff. Now, way before the conference last week, there was a show that came out the week before that, which was only 11 days ago, but it feels much longer ago than that. And we talked about the product of the week. So just a reminder, that was the PyGamer starter kit, and we also started a competition for you to win one. Now, if you are interested in the PyGamer starter kit, you can head to the blog. There'll be a link to this in the description. You can watch Robin's fantastic run-through of what the PyGamer starter kit is, but in short, it is a microcontroller. The Pi in the name is not for Raspberry Pi, it's for Python, because you can program it in MicroPython, including visual make block programming languages as well. Yeah, it's a low power microcontroller. I believe it has the 80 mega SAMD51 chip inside it, and it is a really lovely looking little kit. And we said, if you'd like to win one, all you need to do is enter the normal way we have competitions. Be subscribed to the channel, say what you would do with it, and leave the hashtag PyGamer. And it is now time to announce the winner of that contest. And the winner was Gianpaolo Macario, whose name I've probably mispronounced, I apologize, who said, "Thank you for this nice episode. If I happen to win the PyGamer, I will tell my family I use it as a teaching pendant for some robots we have on the factory floor, but I'm not sure they will believe me." Yeah, I can see yourself using this in a quiet corner of the factory to get a little bit of retro gaming in on a shift, perhaps. But yes, congratulations. We will be sending this one out to you. We'll be in touch with you as to how we can send it to you. And we will be giving away more product of the weeks as we go forward. And of course, there is the Electromaker of the Month that will be coming up at the end of each month, along with other Electromaker contests that will be announced as and when. We have a few nice bigger contests in the pipeline, although as the details are still being hashed out, I don't want to kind of leak anything at all. But there will be a return to those larger scale contests where we give out hardware and give people several months to complete them. If that's the kind of thing you're into, watch this space. I'm really looking forward to announcing some stuff about that soon. Now, we're going to talk about a new board from SeeedStudio in the Xiao form factor. And if you're not familiar with the Xiao form factor, I have lost mine because it's so small. What on earth? It was literally hidden behind a pen on my desk. So yes, the SeeedStudio Xiao form factor, well known for being absolutely tiny, size of the end of my thumb, used for mechanical keyboards and all kind of stuff, and there's been various variations of it, an ESP32 variant, an RP2040 variant. This is the NRF 82540, or something like that, 52840, designation numbers, which is the Bluetooth low energy version, which has also some sense stuff on it. This has an IMU and a MEMS microphone, and that'll become important in just a moment. And the variation that they've just brought out is the ESP32S3. Now this comes with a number of advantages, but the biggest one is in this red box right here. So this is a 30-pin micro board-to-board connector, which allows you to connect a lot more things to the Xiao, which covers one of the main problems with the Xiao, which was a lack of input and output. The S3 is probably the closest chip to the original ESP32 in terms of power and use cases. The S2 is weird. The C3 is not designed to be a complete competitor. It's much single-core, lower power RISC-V chip. If I'm missing any of those out, please do let me know. But yes, this blog post, which will of course be linked in the description, was actually put out a month ago when they were announcing that they were going to release it. But I've waited until now because there's actually a purchase link for it, and if you look in the description of the video, there'll also be that purchase link. Now, the S3 caused a sensation in the community. They talked about it on Twitter, and yes, this board-to-board connector is the big thing. Compact size while still accommodating a whopping 30 pins with an extreme pin distance of just 0.4 millimeters. And here's an example of how this could be used. Now, this is a regular sized camera connector being used with a conversion board, I believe, to connect to the Xiao. Obviously, as time goes on, they're going to put out things which have a dedicated connector that is the right size. And this is, adding a tiny camera to keep the same size footprint as the Xiao, but adds a camera for tiny ML and edge AI uses, presumably. In fact, that is the main things that they put under here, open source and tiny ML. Now, if you're a fan of the more technical blog posts, this will really work for you. This goes through a lot of the design considerations that went into making this, and some of it is way up over my head. Not scared of admitting that, not an engineer. However, it is still a fascinating read, and as my knowledge does sort of get higher, I find myself understanding a little more of this each time. Here's the thing. The ESP32S3 version is already out. There's going to be another version coming out in around a week's time, or maybe it's already out by the time you see this video, and that is going to be the Sense variant, which is why I said it was sort of interesting that this board is the one that I pulled out of my stack of Xiaos, because I have about 6 of them. Because I'm presuming it's going to work in a similar way to this. But if you look at this board now, I'll overlay an image of this board. The Sense module, sorry, I lost my English for a second there, is in exactly the same spot where the connector is on this one. So I wonder how they're going to pull that off. I wonder how they're going to get the IMU and microphone unit, if indeed that's what's going to be on it, to work nice with the aerial and the connector. We're just going to have to see. Maybe that one won't have the connector, and that isn't the end of the world, because presumably you could use that connector to connect to a separate MEMS microphone and inertial measurement unit if you needed it. Not sure. Anyway, that is only 2 of the 3 things that Seed have announced, but these 2 are the ESP32S3 boards. As I said, this link to this blog post will be in the description. And of course, the purchase link, which is here, will be in the description of the video as well. Only €7.49, which is kind of amazing. Again, I'm sure there's going to be someone out there who's going to point out that you can get S3 chips on dev boards from China for half this price, but this is not in the Xiao form factor with the new connector, all that kind of stuff. If you know you're going to want it, you know you're going to want it. I absolutely do. I love the idea of being able to stack an array of crazy things on top of an S3, and just seeing what can be done with it. Anyway, that's these 2, but there's one other thing that Seed has announced, and let's look at that now. So this round LCD screen is not specifically designed to work with the S3 variant. In fact, it's using the ESP32C3 variant right here, which is the one with the 2 user buttons. But as you can see, this is a quite nice and seemingly decent frame rate LCD screen that can be used and with touch. And there, as you can see, you swipe down, you've got your notifications there. This is presumably one of the demos that will ship with the board and the documentation. And this is designed specifically to work with Xiao boards. So there's, a few things that immediately come to mind to that, whether you're thinking about wall-mounted things for smart home uses, whether you're thinking about maybe making some kind of smart watch thing, because looking at the size of the fingers there and the size of the circle and thinking about how small a Xiao is, that might actually fit quite nicely on a wrist if you wanted to make your own smartwatch design. There is very little information about this right now. This is something that when we were messaged by Seed about the other one, kind of saying that this is coming, but it's coming, it'll be later this month. So there's no more information about it yet, but it does look very cool. There's a little watch battery attachment there as well. I don't know what that's for, whether that's for a real-time clock or whether that's supposed to power the whole thing. Seems unlikely, but it's possible. We'll be coming back to this when it comes out. And as always, there's a link to this Twitter post in the description of the video if you want to go through the replies to find out more. The ESP32 is everybody's darling. This is the beginning of Andreas Spiess's video about the, well, surprisingly enough, ESP32. Now, the ESP32 was, introduced in 2017. I was about to say 2016. It's been around for about 5 or 6 years now, and everyone loved it with good reason. It's fast, it has Wi-Fi, if you don't have power restrictions, it's easy to use. It's so loved to the point that me as a journalist and a content creator haven't been able to talk about any other chip, really, including the RP2040 or whatever, without someone in the comments saying, why don't you just use an ESP32? It's better, it's cheaper, it's whatever. Which gets frustrating after a while, but you have to, you have to be reticent to the idea that okay, I understand that. As far as most makers go, it's convenient and easy to use. But yeah, as it says, there are some things that were never liked by people who had specific use cases for it. It is power hungry, and it doesn't have a pinout that's quite as friendly as some of the other things. Just a point, first things first, if you're not familiar with Andreas' channel, it amazes me if you're not, because he's got almost 500,000 subscribers, but he does these amazing spreadsheets that compare all various different kinds of boards and chips, and he's got one for the ESP32, and it really is incredible. It goes through all of the differences, and it highlights things that you should be aware of. Just a side note at this point, when we were at Embedded World, I was talking at the Blues Wireless stands to the guys about the note card, and Andreas, just after we finished filming, just walked up and shook my hand and said, now I see how you film those things at conferences. And had a lovely chat, and I was a bit starstruck because I've been watching him for so many years, and also kind of it was a very weird but lovely feeling that he recognized me. And I mean, of course, I was wearing the hat and an Electromaker shirt, new Electromaker shirts, by the way. So of course he recognized me, but it was a very wonderful feeling to have someone who I've watched for so many years and learned so much from come up and say hello and say he appreciates the stuff that we do as well. It's very nice. Second point, just quickly, if you weren't already aware, Andreas has a second channel which is all about radio. And I know there are some people in our audience who are big fans of software-defined radio and all that kind of stuff. You may already be aware of that. If you're not, it's going to be the perfect thing for you because it's the exact level of detail that Andreas brings to microcontrollers, Arduino, ESP32, all of that kind of stuff, but pointed in the direction of radio, which is something that he is equally passionate about. So, I will leave, the reason I wanted to mention this video is specifically because, as it says up here, one of the chips he's talking about is the ESP32S3, which I just thought was a nice bit of symmetry, given that we've just talked about the new ESP32S3-based Xiao boards. But as to his actual conclusions, I'll leave that up to you to go and watch his video. There is, as always, a link in the description of this video. Finally, this week we're going to talk about Maker Faire Rome 2023. Now, I'm sure long-time watchers of the show will be aware of the fact that we were at Maker Faire Rome in 2022, and we covered it the same way we do every other conference. Although, of course, it's got a very different focus. It is a maker fair, and the things on show there were just absolutely incredible. The feel of the whole event was incredible. It seemed like every school child in Rome had been brought to the event for the student day, and the buzz was just incredible. The Maker Faire Rome 2023 engine is absolutely definitely running. We're already confirmed that we're going to be there, and Maker Faire Rome have just put out a call out for big projects. In fact, the call is for Big Bang projects for the 2023 edition. And yes, if you make big things, a good example of this would be the One Love Machine Band. Who were these guys, who are definitely a Big Bang attraction. Now, I'm sure you don't have to make anything quite as extreme as an entirely pneumatically powered punk band that is made of scrap metal, but that's the idea. They're looking for the bigger things in this call to action. And there are some guidelines here as well. They're looking for large-scale projects, highly interactive projects involving the public, set up attractions with high visual impact suitable for giving character to event spaces, and areas for interactive activities. And so bear in mind that this is just a call for the bigger things. It even says here, this is not the call for makers. That will be happening soon. If you are a maker who wants to bring your project to Maker Faire Rome, much like Michelle, who made the amazing finger typing glove, who we met last year, she was someone who just from the States decided to enter it, and it got accepted, and she ended up going to Rome to show her stuff. If you have something cool that you've made or you think might be finished in time, when that call goes out, that will be the time for it. But yes, I wanted to mention this now because I'm very excited about going to Maker Faire Rome in 2023, and on the off chance there are people who make very big things that watch the Electromaker Show, I wanted to point you in the direction of the fact that this is already happening. The call-outs are beginning, and yes, you could be at Maker Faire Rome. If you are one of the people who sees this and you're going to be going there, please do let us know as well. We'll come and say hello. So that has been our show for this week. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you for the continued support that you show us, whether that's by clicking like on the YouTube type things, or going to the store, or coming up in person and saying hello, as I probably mentioned in the show, has happened a couple of times recently. It's an incredibly heartwarming thing to be kind of recognized for doing this in public, if a little bit odd still. But yes, it's been an absolute pleasure to cover Embedded World. I'm really glad to be back in the Attic of Dreams and getting the show going again, and yeah, I'm really excited for the stuff that'll be coming up over the next few weeks. Advanced warning, in a couple of weeks' time there's going to be a sort of odd Electromaker show because it will be filmed from the UK. I will be there for the first time in a while. I remember mentioning to people before Christmas, perhaps on the show as well, that I was going to try and do a show from the UK. Unfortunately, we ended up not being able to go for health reasons, and so it's been rescheduled to April, and there will be a show probably from the middle of the woods somewhere in the north of England. Who knows how that's going to go. Anyway, the important thing, as always for me, is that between now and when I speak to you next, you have a fun, safe, and creative time, and I'll chat to you then. Now, this is me talking with Daniel Cooley, the CTO, the Chief Technical Officer of